Hey guys, welcome back. Let's continue with the Middlegame series. And today we'll be doing some exercises on some typical tactical, strategic, and personal patterns. I think we're live. Hello, Akshay. Okay. Yep. Hello, Deepak. Hello, Rama. So today we'll do some tactical exercises, some personal exercises, and utilize whatever we learned thus far in actual practice through exercises. Sorry. Okay, so this is a tactical problem here, and I'm sure it's not that difficult. White to play. How do we open up and get to this king? What do we do here in this position? So what we're going to do is solve some problems also together, and some personal exercises. So whatever we learned thus far, we'll try to put it into good use. Hopefully you can hear me clearly. Okay, let's get started. So the first one, anybody, any ideas? I mean, this is not that difficult. How do we expose this king even further? Anybody? Okay, we can. I can show it to you myself. But what we're trying to do is expose the king. We have sacrificed the piece, and we are piece down. So clearly, maybe we have to be a little bit faster. And you can sack some material to open up lines. Of course, you can even get your bishop. Oops. You can even get your bishop out into the open on c1. Accidentally played out the move on the board, but rook d8 is a good way to try to open up these lines. Rook d8, sacrificing a pawn, and after this comes rook d1, which immediately delivers a mate for the king. The queen has to interfere. Queen into d7. Now what is important is figuring out the right way to deliver it is also important. This is a typical pattern trying to open up the lines. Sacrificing a pawn, your pawn is getting in the way there. Two pieces are enough here. The rook and queen together quite strong. But if you had done the same this way, that would have probably not given out the best result, because if you capture with the you can capture with the rook, and let's say we capture rook into rook f1, he can get something like knight f7 in there, so that doesn't deliver the mate the way we want it to. We could still play rook d7 and get a win going here. Yeah, rook d7 and get a win going here, but it's too complicated, and we're looking at the simplest pattern, which is rook d8. Let's move on to the next one. Now here in this position, this king seems weak. White has just sacrificed some material by sacrificing a pawn here on g6. Black took fg6. Once again, let's not forget that we are a piece down. He's a piece up, so whatever we do, we got to do it fast. Can we try to target this king and deliver a mate? Any ideas, guys? There are a few patterns you should be looking for in this position also, and then determine which one is working for us. What do we do here? Hello, Rushikesh. Of course, rook queen h2 would be a good idea to try to get your queen to h7, but the point is that the king may escape towards f7. You're letting it go. So whenever you're looking for this pattern, you can just try to improve just a little bit. Queen h2 also is good, but maybe you can first try to cut him off if that's possible on f7. Maybe take over this file. That's one more thing that you can do. One more thing is what Akshay said in the chat here with rook h8, sacrificing another rook here. You're a piece down and you want to sacrifice more because you want to catch that king. So there are numerous number of patterns here available in this position. We got to just figure out which one works the best right now. Now coming to queen h2, right? Queen h2 may work or may not work. It's a little slow because it's not having an immediate mate idea. And black can, let's say, play something like bishop f6. Maybe he can escape with the king to f7. Okay, maybe. So We will keep this up our sleeve, but maybe that's not working. Now coming to rook h8, king into h8 and queen f7, Akshaya. Unfortunately, black has a defense, and that is the idea here for white is rook h1 and delivering a mate straight away for this king. You're trying to box that king into the corner, and rook h1 delivers a mate. Unfortunately, bishop h4 comes in here, and a nasty defense in here with g5, maybe. Or maybe we should get a queen. Actually, this is some problem here with queen h5. If I defend like this, then queen h5. So like I said, too many tactics here on the board. But I think if black plays correctly with queen d8, it's safe to say that he's like a rook and a piece up. Even if you win one piece here, you're still like a rook down, and black can also think of sacrificing some extra material to equalize here. Not equalize, win the game. Sorry, my bad. Win the game. That's not even about equalizing anymore. Black is just simply winning. We have sacrificed way too much material. But this is definitely one pattern that you should know. Trying to box the king in the center by sacrificing a rook, putting a queen on f7 with the idea of rook h1. Tactical pattern, but you should be aware of it. That is not working here. And anybody else, any other pattern? Yes, we did see just rook h7. That is not really working out well here in this position. It's not working well. There is one more pattern here, which again is going to exploit the king. Most of our patterns are going to exploit the king because we have sacrificed a lot of material here. Rook f1 is a good move, trying to box that king in. Unfortunately, again, rook f8, and the queen is, the king is escaping. Like if you play queen h2, rook into f1, and now either you play the rook out here to control this king's escape, or you capture with the knight, which allows this king to escape to f7, just not in time. Exactly, rook d f1 is what I played on the board, Akshaya, but that's also not working. Then you should look at one more pattern here, and that is something a little bit difficult, but still does the job. That's the final finish. Like I'll give an example and then you will get the answer very easily. Let's say I play here, the king is escaping here. What would you do? You try to cut off this king from escaping to f7. What moves come to your mind if you're trying to cut off that king's escape route? Can anybody tell me which move you would play here to cut off that king's escape route to f7? Yeah, bishop c4 will be cutting off that escape route, temporarily checking the king. Of course, he will capture it back. And then, Akshaya, do we have a move? It's rook d7, exactly. You're trying to cut off this king here, and now queen h8 is a pretty strong threat here, trying to mate the king. Unfortunately, here also he's luckily getting his escape route. Luckily, his queen is also defended there. Very luckily, everything is falling in place for white. Otherwise, if the queen was somewhere on b8, we would have nicely done queen h8 and then captured that queen hanging there. That is also not working. But the pattern that we are looking at is based on this only. It's the same idea. We're trying to box this king somewhere. If not h8, maybe f8, wherever it is. And the pattern is based on this idea. Eliminating some defenses and then something to do with rook coming to d7. Can anybody think about it? Another minute, guys, and then we will show you the answer, and then we can move on to the next one. A lot of patterns to be solved today, so don't worry if you miss out on this one. You got it? Well, definitely you can enlighten us, Ojas. Yes, exactly. Like, okay, that is why we are doing this. Like bishop c4 followed by queen h2 also would not just cut it, Akshaya. It's just not enough because again the king is escaping here, and he can take care of this. Like for example, you want to get a rook to d7, he might play something like this, or he might play something like queen c8. He can take care of that idea, and then it will become difficult to execute a pattern. Of course, I'm not playing the best move, and I'm sure people will already start questioning my moves, but it doesn't work in that way. But you can definitely eliminate the defense with queen c5 and then bishop c4. Again, black's problem is nothing is coming in the way here. His king comes to f8, and then comes this beautiful rook d7, which also delivers a mate with rook h8. Or you can also look at the direct pattern, which is rook hf1. I mean, he can continue his agony and delay this torture, but after this comes rook f7, and we just deliver a mate for the king on f7. Again, another pattern, the king mated right away here, boxed by his own rook on f8, which is a problem. And there is absolutely nothing. Even rook d7 is the beauty, because it just cuts off this side, and there is nothing stopping us from getting rook h8. It just mated by force. Like rook e7 doesn't help him because our bishop does the job, so rook h8 still is a mate. Rook e6 doesn't help him because the rook is doing the job. Rook h8 still is a mate. Bishop d5, desperate attempt, kind to like get something there. Rook h8 still is unfortunately a mate. And that is a nice pattern here. Maybe you can get creative with rook f7. Another pattern here, the king boxed in on f8, and we deliver a mate straight away. So queen to c5, eliminating the defense. Bishop to c4, and then we see another pattern here. What you need to do in the game, you need to implement these patterns. Let's go on to the next one. Right away here now, what would you capture with? Let's say I'll put this position as black. Simple positional and tactical patterns. Let's capture with the bishop and develop a piece, or let's capture with the pawn and keep a strong center. What do you think we should do here in this position? You would capture with the bishop, is it? Okay, so generally this position comes from the King's Indian setup, because we have a bishop on g7, easy to recognize. King's Indian setup. Normally the best capture in this position will always be the pawn, okay? Keep this in mind, always be the pawn. Like you want to keep this center, because if you capture with the bishop, then the entire point is voided. You're just giving away the e4 square, and white can also use this immediate idea to capture this e4 square with something like g4. Looks weakening, but the point is your bishop has to come back, and later white might also think of castling on the king side, like solidify with h3, put his bishop on d3, castle on the queen side, and later maybe even play h4 h5. This is just an idea to play h3, maybe even play h4 h5. Problem for black is his bishop is bad, and he has very great difficulties to try to get something. Now let's say you're black in this position, white played h3 here. Okay, not a bad move, but we know the ideas. He will be castling and trying to get something going quickly on the board. What would you do as black in this position if you're looking for counterplay? gf5 is the better capture, guys, and I'll show it to you why exactly. But we see bishop f5. What is the move that you should do in such positions if your bishop is bad on g7 and you're looking to get some counterplay on the board? What do? You have to try to open up somewhere. You know he might castle on the queen side, most likely, and then start something in the center. He could have played bishop d3 to consolidate it. e4, exactly, that's the move, and that is what we have also studied. When you're trying to go for counterplay, you can sacrifice some material, provided you open up lines and not open up lines for your opponent. Here we are opening up the center, sacrificing some material, and trying to get some play on the board. Not that it's the best move in this position, but you're trying to do that. What do you think white should do? White will not try to allow that. White will also play cautiously and carefully. And what do you think is white's best move in this position? He can sometimes, like I'll just show that this is not the best move, I would say, but I don't know exactly whether it's the best move. But if he feels like fe4, rook e8, too many things to defend in this pawn, anyways, the backward pawn on e4, it's a weak pawn, not really helping us. Sometimes adding f4 in the mix to keep that file closed, later thinking of g5 to exploit the pawn also is a good idea. Bishop d4 is a very bad idea. Excuse me, what are you doing? B into f3, b into f3. The rook is, there's a queen coming, rook is coming. What are you doing here? That is actually helping black. That's helping black quite a lot. He might find some tactical resources also in here with knight g4 or something. Something might come in and blow up our position immediately. No, you don't want to open it up. If you really want to do that, capture the pawn. Why are you playing bishop d4? f4, or you capture the pawn, but definitely f4 you can play. I would play f4 to keep the position center locked down, and I can later try to expand with g5, and that's why we see the point of this move h3. Like if a castle e4 becomes this should be played on the board, has to be played to get some counterplay, otherwise you will just keep struggling. And h3 tries to bolster this with f4, so I to defend the g5 pawn. Okay, now why exactly gf5? Let's look at it. Because you keep a strong center here, Anyways, after g4, he retreated the bishop back to d7. Gf5 does help us keep control of most squares, like these are all under control of our pawns, and it becomes difficult for white to execute the plans of, like, trying to take control. For example, if you play something like g4, we can even take fg4 and get play, because we don't end up with a backward pawn, and we can sometimes even push f4 and then even follow up with something like e4 to get counterplay. Sometimes if he's going to castle on the other side, we can even play c6 to open up, depends on the position. But f5 generally, gf5 generally keeps more control. So in king's Indian setups, you normally capture g into f5. Important point to remember and understand. Let's go to the next one. So this is white to play. Let me flip it up for you. White to play. What do you do in this position now? How would you continue as white? 1 minute, guys. Yeah. Thank- Okay. Yeah. What did you say here? Bishop into b6. Yes. So there are a few things you can think of in this position differently. You can think of, like, you have to see opponent's ideas, right? Opponent's idea is knight c4. Of course, he wants to activate and get some play because white is on his way. Now, if you look at it from attack perspective, somebody said h. Rushikesh, you said h5. Yeah. So the first problem with h5 is the move knight c4 will come on the board. Displaying. Knight c4 will come on the board, and it will be a little bit of a problem because he'll get his attack going fast. So that is the first thing we'll have to look at. Unnecessarily, you cannot just continue with the attack. Now, why exactly is a move like bb6 good here in this position? Because you still can continue the attack without having to worry about knight coming to c4 and pawn coming to b4 and creating too many problems. As well as the third thing, which is you establish total control over the position with something like knight d5. Now the knight is definitely a better piece than the bishop. You have complete control over all the light squares, and black's possibilities of playing b4 and so forth are also very limited. Now it becomes very easy for white because your knight is just too powerful. A common theme to keep in mind may be applicable not just because we're trying to attack and finish our opponent, but we also have a very strong positional lead or advantage here in this position, because if you look at it, the bishop is just not having anything much to do. Bishop into b6 followed by knight d5. This is not from Fisher's. It could be Fisher's game, actually. I'm not sure. Okay, this could be Fisher's game. I don't remember because I don't have the game name. I just have the position in the notation here. But if I reference it, oh yeah, you're right. Of course, it's Fisher Bolbochan in Stockholm, 1962. Very nice, Sojus. Yeah, same pattern. It was played by Fisher. It was played by many different players, and you see many different patterns similar to this. But basically, our main goal is to take control of the d5 outpost here. A knight is way too powerful. Then we can think of even just going with an attack. But even if the queens go off the board, okay, I'll just show you this for. Okay, this becomes very bad. I just do it like this. Even the queens go off the board, like, you're completely better in this position also. Like, let's play rook c6. Let's not give away the pawn. Here also, the knight is much better in the end game. Even though the queens are off the board, white should be most likely winning. Can shift the rooks to the other side. Exchange. Once he exchanges both the pair of rooks, then he is completely winning, because the knight end game, the knight is always better here. Like, the bishop has hardly any possibilities. Of course, in this position, you can also just go with your attack with h5 g6 and continue, but the main important thing was to play bb6 and take control with knight d5. Very important pattern to keep in mind in such similar positions on your in your game. Also, if you get such an opportunity, you may have to get it done in a different way. For example, your bishop was on f1, bishop was on d7, rook was on h1. White played bishop h3, exchanged that bishops. After the knight came, snapped it, so that he doesn't even give him the double bishop advantage to play with, or any sort of counterplay. Light square bishop off the board. It's just a beautiful position with bishop e6 followed by knight d5. Let's move on. Yeah, in this position now, white to play. What do you do in this position? How do we continue? This is not a winning position also. The material is completely equal. Only thing we have is a little bit extra space. Let's say black has tried to push his h pawn and he's looking forward to some things. As white, figure out what idea black might execute in the next couple of moves and think what is the best move for white in this position. Yes, very nice. You're all very aware of patterns, and that's what we are trying to do here. Typical tactics and typical positional patterns like this. I'm sure everybody has already realized that maybe not a tactic. King g5, knight g5, you mean? Okay. So we have some suggestions like preferably just tell me what exactly black will also try to do. Even in your games, you should look at it that way. Like, why not just develop a rook into the game and bring it to the center right now? Why not? Think that's exactly what I want to know from you. Why exactly are you not just why are you moving the knight to g5 in this position? When you think of black's ideas, automatically it will be very easy to determine why exactly we're doing such a thing or why you're looking at a move like knight g5. I want to know that. I'm sure you're looking at this fork here, of course, but that's a one more idea. Like, I want you to improve your position and also maybe look at maybe 2 3 moves deeper. That wouldn't hurt too much. f7 is definitely an idea, but he can defend it, right? Why not just like do something like rook h e1 in this position? Also, figuring out which breaks are going to be a bigger problem is also quite important in this position. Like, is h3 the break that black is looking forward to? Because if h3 was the main idea, then white could have easily played rook h e1. If you know what black's idea is, you can definitely mention it here, and then we will understand why we are executing something like knight g5, knight f6, and d5. Why are we looking at such kind of possibilities? Why not just simply something like rook h e1 on the board? Knight g5 definitely prevents h3, but that is not the main important thing we are looking forward to. First step is thinking of what black tries to do. So if you flip it, black is trying to do something like d5 here. Okay, so if you think of h3 as a break and you play something like h3 yourself, black is already completely better here, completely like completely better with d5, because we know the themes, right? We know that d4 pawn is an isolated pawn. We have already exchanged a lot of material, and end games are not good with an isolated pawn. Not at all. Definitely not something that you want to be in. Same goes for rook h e1. It is slightly better than what with h3, but still after d5 what you end up in is not a very good position. You may be completely minus here. You're not even materially down, but you're completely in a very bad position with follow up on the rook d8, putting pressure furthermore on this d4 point. uh like you can definitely well, I don't know, I was kind of bad, but is that the case really? Maybe I don't know. I don't know. Just I am definitely not as good. Like, I'm not very extremely fluent. Sometimes I tend to stutter, but okay, glad that you understand me. That's the main goal. We're trying to understand new things here. So d5 is something that is important to take care of, and thus either you play d5, either you play knight g5, move that knight away. Now, it was main goal was not to do here, not to like stop h3 from coming. Maybe some sneaky ideas like forking your opponent, but okay, I'm sure your opponent, we should not think of it like this, that our opponent is going to fall for it. Of course he'll defend it with rook rook df8 or rook hf8, and it shouldn't be that much of a problem for him. Rook h e1, the problem is d5. Now, coming to choosing between these three moves, 2 3 moves that we have, right? Rook h e1 we have eliminated. That is a bad choice. That is a that is a bad choice. Rook h e1 is bad. Then there is one more move that Ramakrishna said, knight f6, and this move is a multi-purpose move, a very nice one, because one of his plans is also to come to e8. and activate his rooks. That's the open file. What do rooks do? Rooks need open files. One more plan, he pushed h4. He's not only aiming at h3, but also looking at a rook lift into the game. Maybe. We don't know, but maybe that's a possibility. Knight f6 controls this, or controls that, controls this. It is taking care of this, as well as preventing moves like d5. So it's like an outpost for the knight, a temporary outpost. It's not planted yet. We don't have a pawn on g5 to say it is an outpost, but definitely doing an excellent job there because black is kind of restricting. So what you're doing here, you're gaining space, you're putting a knight on a very good square, and you're doing three things at once. So whenever you look at moves, if you see a possibility from your opponent, see if you can, do multiple things at once. Like a move like d5 is direct, but it's helping him also come into the game, attack your knight, and then maybe move to g4, play h3. Like he can do the same thing which we just executed, that is h3 and knight f3. He can do something similar, trying to keep our rook on h1 tied down here. It's not an outpost, but something that's possible. He can also activate his rook, opening up some ideas like this and this to try to get his uh, pieces in the game. But knight f6 was a nice move because takes care of all the three things at once. Beautiful outpost there. Next idea, rook h1. Now coming to h3 break, it's not a very serious break because this pawn is way too ahead and it's not very, like, it's defended by your own rook. It's not an ideal pawn. It's definitely good in the end game, maybe if the knight reaches f3 somehow, but as long as we don't allow it and play g3 to keep everything under control, maybe even look at g4 could be interesting, trying to plant this knight here on g5, and furthermore just get the rook to e1. Black is slightly struggling here because he cannot really get rid of this knight on f6 pretty easily. So that is a nice move, knight f6, preventing d5. Hello everybody, people who are new here, glad to have you here. Don't forget to like, of course. Let's move on to the next one. Now here again, a small pattern. I think there are numerous ways that white can win this, but I'm looking at a particular pattern. You all can try to tell me what you're looking at in this position as white. Of course, first thing, materially, we are not down. We are kind of well placed materially. So shall we give a beautiful knight with knight into c5 away, or shall we look at something else in this position? Your call. What do you think we should do? Can we create more weaknesses? Can we give a beautiful knight on e4 away on c5? Can we try to trap his bishop on c5? These are the things that immediately you should be looking at. Now, we do have a bad structure like this, but that bad structure is not bad yet because we're not in the end game. This knight on e5 is not planted because we always have f4. So these are not outposts for him. What do we do here? Yes, exactly. That is the way. Try to see if you can instill more weaknesses before you go ahead and capture your knight for the bishop. That's definitely a bad idea because it's not entering a bad position, not a bad move, but definitely we have much better to do here, and that is creating more weaknesses around the king. Simple move, h6, because if we play g6, we have a tactic with knight f6. One more tactic, of course, winning a lot of material. Probably black will be on his way home. The second thing that we should look at is if we can trap his piece by playing b4. Now, after bishop d4, I don't see an immediate way to trap this piece, and I don't want to play like Shiro and Tal to play h6 and sacrifice my exchange to try to finish him there. So I think a simple h6 first will do me good, will give me the f6 square. Now, let's say he plays knight d7, we can immediately capture, or we can see if we can improve something. I think immediate capture is safe to say is very simple, but apart from that, what are the moves that you should immediately look at if you're looking at it tactically, trying to improve the same idea that you're trying to exploit, that f6 square, right? What other move can you look at besides h into g7 in this position? Exploiting the king is the main idea here, of course. We're trying to exploit the king. The queen is trying to enter, very nice, but not the best move. Ramakrishna, I think we're trying to exploit this square. And if there is nothing better, always go ahead and simply capture the g7 pawn. Next, you can get the rook, you can get the queen, you can get a knight, and probably deliver a very cool, calm mate. If you play something like queen h5, like if you're like, there's nothing clear with queen h5. Like if you play g6, suddenly his your attack is not as strong. Maybe still have a good attack, still you're winning, but it's not clear anymore. Just got a defense maybe blocked on this position, so not very unnecessary. At g7 would be good. And what else? Think about the f6 square. How do we exploit that? Take away the g7 or attack that g7 more, and then comes knight h5. Of course, not the most necessary or the best move, but something, some patterns that you should probably know or look at, trying to get that e8 rook. Of course, at g7 is the simplest one. Like completely expose that king, bring it out in the open, and then just get knight h5 and put him to sleep. Let's go to the next one. Now here, uh, there is a problem. We have a small problem here in this position. That is, we have given him, like, we don't really have an immediate finish. We don't have a mate, and he has connected pawns on the other side. The moment he starts regrouping his pieces, like he brings his queen somewhere closer towards the king side. What is happening? Towards the king side, then he will be able to defend his position, and these pawns can really be annoying later in the later stages of the game. In the end game, let's say, it could become a little annoying because materially he's up at the moment. Now in such positions, when you don't really have an immediate idea in the position, you should try to eliminate some pieces which can cause, like, which are defending, like both the pieces actually are defending pretty the king pretty well. These pieces are a little bit out of the game. They're not very coordinated. They are not where they belong. The rook belongs on f8, let's say. The queen belongs somewhere close, like can maneuver very fast, but the queen belongs somewhere close for the defense. So what you should look at is whether we can immediately eliminate the pieces close to the king. These are the pieces. Immediately eliminate it and get something going. So the possible ideas that you should look at are knight h. Okay, that's a previous one. Hello. Knight g4 seems like one idea to get rid of this knight. Bishop f7 is another idea to try to get rid of the bishop. Now, figuring out which one is better is your goal in this position. Now, one more thing we should look at, but very carefully verify whether we can just, expose a king like this. A bad idea. Normally, always a bad idea. In this position, maybe it's not extremely clear, but I still feel like it's a bad idea because I just don't see this attack to be too strong, and I can already see my tactical sides coming into play. I just used your king on h1 to deliver this check, go into an end game, and maybe I'm slightly better already. Your king is also very vulnerable now, very juicy there on h1, and his king looks safer, surprisingly. So g4 is something as the last resort if you don't have anything at all. um, Knight g4 and bishop f7 are two ways you can get rid of that knights. Common patterns: try to get rid of the pieces around the king. Maybe you get a mate going. For example, knight g4, queen f8, and we probably have a mate soon on the board. Probably. We'll look at it later. I think there is a mate here. How do we mate him? That's a little interesting. Maybe we'll have to use some. We do here. Maybe we'll have to use some, simple, silly moves like f5 sometimes to win. Can we do a direct mate? I'm missing out on. Well, it's safe to say that there's one thing I can see is bishop f5 check, g6, and rook c7. Maybe we can do rook c7 first, and maybe that will be even better. There'll be so many different ways to win this. There will be many different ways. I'm not finding the mate here immediately. Maybe there's a mate immediately also. Should be a mate somewhere. But if not, you're definitely eliminating the piece, and uh, that's a good idea. But the problem is that f5, yeah, f5 also I was looking at. F5 also I was looking at. But f5, like, okay, f5 may also be interesting. Maybe f5 is also winning. But okay, now in this position, knight g4, there is a big, not a big, there's a very small, very subtle problem. Otherwise, knight g4 would be very nice here because, again, queen is not coordinated, not reaching somewhere like e7, f8. Rook similarly not reaching those squares. Black has only one good defense in this position that white had to look at. Trying to find the best defense. And that best defense is not very easy to see. Is it right? Is it what right exactly? I don't know what right you're asking now, just but Black has only one defense. If you can find it here, I'll give you a few. I'll give you a minute. If you can find it here, what is Black's only defense here? And whenever you're in such positions, you have to look at some ideas which are not going to be passive, because if you play passively, probably his attack will work out fine. His rook is coming somewhere here, so you have to find some kind of tactical resources. What is important? Maybe exchanges. Based on that, knight h7, possibly not a good idea. Maybe it still defends, but I wouldn't say knight h7 is a good idea, because I first see that there's a simple tactic for white here after knight h7. Can anybody tell me what that tactic is? Let's flip the board. White to play, what will he do in this position? Knight h7 does not work, and we got to solve it. His king is looking in bad shape. Let's destroy him. Queen. Okay, we'll come back to that. First, let's quickly solve this. Bishop f7. Yeah, we will come back to the best move, of course. Just you have found the best move in the starting position, but knight h6 is the way you can immediately destroy the king, and then queen e5. The queen is dominated there, no square to escape, probably gets mated. And if knight h6 works, then basically the king is out here for us, up for grabs. Most likely, we will be winning somehow or the other. So allowing knight h6 is a bad idea, but black's only defense, I think somebody here, Rishikesh, has found it. Queen b5 is the defense here. Brilliant one, because white can't even interfere with the rook. Queen into f1 is unfortunately hanging there, and our main goal is to exchange the queens. Our main goal was to worry about queen f8 check. The queen cannot really go back. I will just capture. That's it. After this, I will probably regroup my pieces, and I should be most likely winning because of my pawns. And now white is very dearly missing a dark square bishop here to create some possible counterplay. And queen has gone back, rook has gone back. Black has consolidated. His pieces are joining for the defense or for the offense, for both. They're both well placed there, and he's probably even eyeing towards your king there in the near future. So black has got everything in this position right for him. Queen b5 was the only defense, and white will have to bring his knight back to keep some play on the board, which is a waste of time. So there comes that move, bishop f7, trying to eliminate that defender of the king, opening up some ideas with knight g6 check. And if black takes knight into f7, it's, I would not say this position is immediately winning, because again you cannot really get too many pieces in for a mate, but you have got what you wanted. You can regroup your knight to g5, and you have some dangerous ideas. Maybe you can even bring it back to e5. Some dangerous ideas, some interesting checks here, and probably it's enough. Like, you have got what you wanted in this position. You didn't allow him to immediately win the pawn and get his two connected pawns to do the work for him. His king is now exposed. So somewhere, like suppose I play this, somewhere I can even like play something like rook b1, make it difficult, maybe some sacrifice, something could work out well for me for sure. So the goal was to find this move, bishop f7, eliminating the defenders and figuring out which one was the right one. Slightly difficult, but let's move on to the next one. And I will just show you one thing from my game. I'll not look at the entire game, but we will start from a certain position. It has come from Rolpes, let's say like this Italian game. Okay, and I will show you how to play in a certain position. Again, we are trying to, I'm going to ask you also questions. And knight f1 was played. White is trying to regroup his pieces. Definitely not knight g3, because his bishop is in there boxed, and I'm going to trap him with g5. So clearly he's looking for knight e3 and looking forward to knight d5. Now, because he has delayed his castling, because he has kept his king in the center, yes, even a draw is okay, because like, you know, it's very dynamic, it's imbalanced. A draw was kind of okay in that position, but because here the king is in the center, he's trying knight f1. What I did is I went for something aggressive. Now g5. What have I done? I've weakened my position a little bit. So if I play something like g5, it has to be in the spirit of that opening. I have to play a little bit faster. So let's see how he continued. I played knight h5. He put h4 here, which was a bad choice. This was not a good move at all. He should have probably played something like knight e3, and yeah, black is still better here already. Some mistake there in his move order. He played knight f1 a little early, and he put h4 here. So what I did, what do you think I should do here in this position, people? Should I go and capture? Should I play knight f4? Should I push g4? What do you think I should do here? How do you think I should continue? Just see if I can show you the name. Yeah, that should be better. How do you think I should continue here? This is one of the games I've won, but there will be patterns where I sometimes even lose. Yes, you definitely try to gain more space and you can try to push something like g4. The entire point is you're trying to exploit this king in the center. So I played g4 and surprisingly I was expecting something like knight h2 or knight d2, something there in that range, but he played knight g1 here. Okay, trying to get knight e2. I immediately see the king in the center, see these pieces like this. You have to go for something fast. And now is the time to open up with something like f5. Accidentally, I wanted to ask you this question, but I already played it out. So f5 opening up, e into f5, bishop into f5, and knight e2. Now, what do you do in this position as black? Furthermore, now you have a completely dream. It's like a dream position for black here because your pieces are developed. Bishops are aiming, knight is under attack, king is stuck, queen is stuck, rook is stuck, rook on h8 boxed in. You have everything that you want. How do we continue this attack? How do we take it a step further? He's of course planning, if he has played something like knight e2, he's planning to do something like knight e3. He has to do that and try to castle. I saw that, of course, and I tried to do something quickly. Now, if he plays, you can play castle. But one more thing, if he plays knight e3 directly, guys, he will just lead to bishop e3 and then knight g3, it will be a piece down. So clearly he's not going to do that. He played knight e2 to defend that g3 bishop and naming it knight e3 and knight f4. Very good. You're trying to exploit the king in the center. Let's get rid of this. Knight f4. Okay, knight f4 is a possibility. Aiming at g2 and trying to exploit this king straight away in the center. Very good. That was one possibility. What else? Knight rook f8. Okay, yes, rook f8 trying to put more pressure on this. But I just showed you the idea that white is trying to do in this position. He's playing knight e3. So based on that, if you play rook f8 and knight e3, unless we have a finish here, I don't think this idea, it opens up some tactical resources, but I don't think it's doing something immediately in this position. Triple O, yes, of course. Triple O is also a good idea. Trying to get something like d5 going. Trying to get e4 going in the future. But the problem is that he plays knight e3. Still winning. Still maybe there'll be many ways to win. But I found something even better. And why I did this? Again, we have seen these ideas before. His pieces are badly placed. King is in the center. You can definitely sacrifice some material. So what move do you think I played? I gave you a big hint here. I'm definitely okay with sacrificing some material on the board. Opening up more tactical lines and ideas. E4 is not a good idea, I guess. E4 is a bad idea in this position. E4, D4, white is already better, in fact. Like maybe white can be even better. Your bishop is dead on A7 now. He's getting knight E3 nicely. You have your bishop boxed in here with E4. Like, not a good idea. That is a bad idea. You're trying too hard to open up. Bishop F2 is a blunder, of course. There is a difference between, like, sacrificing material and blundering your own piece. Fine line there. This fine line. Bishop f2 is a blunder. We have to figure out that fine line. Cannot go bishop f2 in this position. Let's not do that. d5 is the move, guys. Yes. d4, no. d5. I sacrificed my pawn here, not on f2. d5, trying to open up the position. Because this king is in the center, the coin is lined up, and I can easily try to exploit it. Now, what is white's problem is that I also had one more idea apart from this, okay? I will show you that. If the bishop moves back, I wanted to even push d4 and restrict his pieces furthermore. I'm blocking my bishop temporarily, but that's only temporary. I want to further restrict his knight from coming to e3 and gaining any space whatsoever. And if he plays c4, he has blocked his own piece. I might play e4, I might play knight b4. I just have too many options. One more problem for white is if he plays here, I'm at least winning a pawn. At least. I think should be enough to win the game also. So that was my idea. So white rightly thought that he has to take up the challenge, captured bishop into d5. That's the best idea. I mean, you're anyways in the minus position. You have to do something challenging and try to find for counterplay. Clearly, I'm going to castle. Now, I'm allowing also something like bishop c6. Okay, bc6. But the point is that my pieces are just aiming straight at the king. The king is not escaping anywhere. I'm getting bishop d3. Most likely, this will turn up into a win for me pretty easily. Now my opponent played queen b3, which was even worse, but after bishop d3, he played bishop e6 check, king h8. and bishop g4. He went for the pawn, and after this, the king is in the center. I try to open up more lines rather than capturing and allowing him into castle. That would be a bad idea. Maybe still winning, but a bad idea in my opinion. I tried to keep his king in the center and then use the ideas that somebody in the chat had already mentioned with knight f4. Getting that knight in the center, getting my rooks aligned. Bishop f4, e4, pieces are dead. Bishop on g4, badly placed. Rook joining in, and the king is extremely juicy here on e1. Probably going to be in big trouble here. So knight f4, he played knight h2, sacrificing a pawn, trying to escape. And here also, again, I'm in no rush to capture. I'm in no rush to do anything. This was also winning. But I played another cool move. Again, trying to box him in. Again, trying to restrict. Can anybody tell me what exactly I did as black here? My game is there in Leech's database. Maybe. Maybe it's there. I don't know. That's okay. Can't read it. That's fine. You should definitely practice it though. Hopefully you don't make these mistakes over the board while noting down. You don't want to arbiter to tell you something silly. Knight a5. Okay, that's another idea. You can definitely even join in another piece into the game. But the point is he's castling, so probably did not take that much time. Yeah, it's complete torture, right? The king is right in the center. The thing is that even if he takes on f4, his still pieces are in the center. Either he loses a piece or he's probably going to get mated. One of the two is going to happen. And thus, knight to b7. Knight into g2, you mean? BCS. No worries. Knight into h5 is the move that I played. Everybody is looking at direct ideas. I just coolly played h5 because I know that if it captures, I think after ef4, it's safe to say that the king is stuck right away. And I had a winning plan also. I mean, I just have rook e8 or bishop into d2 followed by rook e8, which most likely wins me the game immediately. I will win the piece here or I will mate him. One of the two is going to happen. One of the two probably will soon happen on the board. Maybe I'm missing out on something even better, but I will show you what happened in the game. He played bishop f. Okay, this is what happened in the game. Yeah, exactly. I found an even better finish here. Complete torture. And I went with bishop into f2. Forgot my own game. King into f2. Queen e3 check. Sacrifice the piece. Now, this is not what you want to do when you have something simple. But the point is, I was having extra time. This is the final round of the tournament. I was having extra time. I was having everything extra on the clock, on the board. Everything is good for me. I had enough time to calculate everything. My opponent was not having time at all. So bishop into f2, queen e3, bishop into e2, knight d4, using another pattern here, trying to pin him, and white played queen c4 to defend it. What do you think is black's best move? Well, I didn't read it, right? Like, look at the game, look at the position, look at those rooks and the king. I wanted to do something spectacular, right? I had time on the clock, like I said. So, Romit, that we'll do in a different stream. Right now, we'll just complete the middle game stream for the next 2 days, but we'll be planning such streams also. Not planning, we'll be doing those streams also. And anyways, we'll be playing on Twitch also, if you are on Twitch. Here also, we tend to do it, but not in this stream, but definitely some other stream soon. Yeah, of course, I wanted to be cool. Yes, not really cool because I had time and I knew I was winning. It was not like, I took a gamble here. Okay, guys, that is not what I did here. I calculated everything. Not that I just like okay, I'll experiment with something. I'll try to play like, no, not like that. I'll not try to play like that. I will be Tal here. I had calculated everything. Rook h8 is a blunder. Excuse me. Knight into d4 and we lose the piece. 2 pieces down. That's too much. The point is that whenever you give 2 pieces like this, you're giving him the opportunity to even give away the third queen. You don't want to do that because you know that the material value of these 3 pieces is actually more than the queen. The only thing is these pieces are badly placed. But why do you want to keep that? You don't want to give him like hope, right? In that process, you can also go wrong. So maybe something simpler, better. Yes, exactly. And that is the kind of thing I'm looking forward to. Knight f5 is a beautiful move. Nothing is stopping knight g3 from coming there on the board. Black is like white is just crushed here. Utterly crushed. If it is knight f3 comes knight g3 and king comes rook e8. Another mating pattern, queen into e2 is a mating idea. If he plays knight d4, Again, I can get creative also here. Can anybody tell me which move I will look at as white here and as black here in this position? The king is stuck here. He has not. See, the point is that I can capture knight into h1. Okay, I can capture knight into h1, simply be an exchanger. But the king is stuck here. He's not escaping. He's not able to get his rooks or something immediately into the game. So then I can get creative. Rook into d4 also may win. But I was looking at the most simple c5. Again, you don't need to do this, and it can sometimes backfire. But it's a cool move because queen into c5 comes knight into e2, right? And then we deliver a mate. No, that's not the move. Of course, can anybody tell me which is the move I'm looking forward to? Yes, queen into e2, knight into e2, and rook into e2, and we have a mate straight away. No time to relax because knight into e2 would have allowed knight c6, and I don't want to play that big end game. Why waste time? Queen into e2 would have delivered a mate. It was a beautiful game, but my opponent went with king e1. Tried to do something better. His idea is that after knight g3, I'll come with knight f1. I'll try to exchange the queen. So what did I do in this position? Can anybody figure out the final blow? Can anybody figure out the final blow? Queen d2 is not the final blow. No. Got to look at some other possibilities here. The king is vulnerable. We know some patterns. What did I do here? What did I do by coming to f5? I'm looking at knight g3 check. What does the knight on f5 do? It has 2-3 different squares. What do you do after king e1? Try to utilize the knight to the fullest potential. Queen g3 is the move, not knight g3. Reposition your pieces exactly. Thank you. Reposition your pieces with queen g3. King comes, and instead of going to g3, this time we'll go to e3. They both just reposition themselves. How beautiful is that? Knight g3, queen e3. After king e1 comes queen e3 and knight g3. It's a mate immediately. Queen g2, mate. Not even interested in this queen. Left alone there, these pieces are just dead. So why this kind of attack worked? Why did I sacrifice so many pieces, or not so many, just one piece and some material? But why did it work? Because his pieces were not just there in the game. His king was in the center, and thus in your games also you can sometimes implement moves like d5 to try to open up and get something going fast, depending on this king's safety. His king is weak, pieces are not coming in the game, and that is what I exploited straight away here. Of course, nobody should play e4 though and block their own bishops like this. That is a very bad idea. You don't want to do that because then you will end up in a bad position. You're helping white here. Probably not a good idea. Yes, you all got the variations, and I will show you one more game in a moment where I actually lost. Same tournament, it was an early game, and I want you to just figure out. We'll go to the end of the game. Okay, so let's just do this. But this is me white, and I was pawn. I'm a pawn. As you can see, that a6 pawn is extra, but my pieces, you can see, like, pieces are slightly having some space, so the position actually is equal. I can play bishop c6 and rook f8, and all I had to do, can anybody tell me what I should have done in this position as white before we move on to what I did in the game? So what should we do as white here? Very good. Rook d1. I like it, Romer. Excellent move. What else? Rook d1 is what you mean, chess player coach. Bishop d7. See, that is why are you doing bishop d7 and getting yourself in situations where you can get into pins, and unless you're trying to trap your opponent, but that is not a good idea. Bishop d7, Rishikesh, is like setting up some traps, but again, like, you're also losing a pawn on e2, so probably not a good idea to play bishop d7. Nice trap, I like it, but it is not going to work against most of the players. So rook d8, if you pin him, suddenly knight f6 and then queen d8 and you win the rook. But that is not a good idea to follow in the game, because if your opponent plays knight d7, suddenly you're 2 pawns down and now you're struggling to hold this position. Probably going to lose. So not the best idea, but bishop d7 is not the idea. There's a simple way you can continue in this position. Don't get yourself in unnecessary pins if that is the case. Like queen c7. Queen c7 is interesting, but do remember something for queen c7 here. Queen c7 leads to, yeah, queen c7, black has a nice defense here. Can anybody find it from black's point of view? So many tactics in this position. Black to play, this bishop is trapped and dominated. What is the only defense for black in this position? What is the only defense for black in this position? Are you saying knight d5 here? We will come back to that actually. We'll come back to capturing on the e pawn. You're forgetting something there. Knight d5, knight e8 is a blunder. Knight e8 looks very this gives a free piece, guys. Really, we don't want to give a free piece. Not like this. Not like this. What is the move? There is only one defensive move, and these are the kind of patterns that help us play better in the game. Definitely not knight e8. The bishop is dominated. Bishop d7, knight d7 is a free piece. Doesn't really work out. What is the only move in this position? Bishop b7 is a free piece. No. No, 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 no. Not like this. Queen c7. It looks fine, but there is a defense, and that brilliant defense is this move, knight d5. Exploiting the pin. That's why you should not get yourself in unnecessary pins. Of course, in this position, you had a point to attack c8, but knight d5 comes to the rescue. Knight d5 is the only defensive move. Bishop d5 leads to queen c7, losing the queen, and knight d5 leads to e d5. You have opened up his bishop for some dangerous possibilities, getting yourself in pin, and you're not even winning the pawn on d5. Probably again not a good idea. Knight d5 is the only defensive resource, so queen c7 was not really working. Now coming back, uh, what should you do simply? Like nobody has told me the simple move that white should, simple plan that white should follow in this position. I mean, I'm a pawn down. If I don't have any tactics working, do you want me to win every game? Probably should be sometimes cool with, equalizing and be happy with a draw. So yes, knight into c8 is the move. Finally, we are heading there. After all the tactical resources that we looked at, finally we are heading to simply capturing the pawn and equalizing the position. So the first thing, that was the simplest thing for me to execute in this game. Simplest thing. But this was an early game, early meaning like let's say a second round or third round. A little rusty maybe. And I was looking for more. I was hungry. I was hungry for a win here in these early games. And just like chess player coach asked me, why not rook d1? Even I was questioning myself, why not rook d1? The point is, I made such a bad decision here that I did not have more time on the clock than my opponent. My opponent had more time than me. She's a pawn up. And I could have played knight c8 and coolly played bb7, ending up with an equal position on the board. But I got greedy because I looked at tactical possibilities. I looked at opportunities and I became an opportunist and played rook d1, which was a big, big, big mistake. Now, coming to queen into e2, guys, of course, this is something that you should know, a simple pattern. Everybody should know. What do you do as white here? White to play and win. Simple idea. This one should not take too much time for the people to find. A very simple idea, and I hope everybody has solved this pattern in their past, someday or the other. And also, putting it out correctly is also important. You cannot clearly play queen d8 because that is not forcing, and queen d8 once again is a beautiful blunder in this position. It's a beautiful blunder. And can anybody try to, before we look at that, let's look at this knight into c8, rook into c8 and queen d8 check, guys. That is the way you're trying to exploit the back rank. Rook into d8, rook into d8, and if knight e8, then rook into e8 delivers a beautiful mate for this unfortunate king. But if he plays something like knight e8, there what happens is we capture the rook and we are attacking twice on that e8 knight. So queen into d1 and king g2. This is the biggest benefit. The bishop does two things at once from a very long range. As a long range piece like a bishop is always useful in open positions, covers all the possible checks and like perpetual check ideas that black had, and you're winning the knight on the next move. Simple piece up should be most likely winning to most of us here. But playing queen d8 directly, he's not first of all forced to take there on d8. That's the simplest thing which should stop you from playing something like queen d8. Queen d2, queen d2. Uh, I don't know where queen d2. Can anybody tell me what is the best beautiful move here for black? Okay. Hmm. Anybody? Well, I'm sure some people may be looking at some ideas already pretty fast. Very fast. Yeah, exactly. Very fast chat. And I think one person has got the idea. It's a beautiful pattern to keep in mind, and that is knight d5. What a move. Just cutting off this queen supply. So rook into d8 becomes a possibility as well as queen d1. Black cannot defend both. Sorry, white cannot defend both. Sorry, as black. Knight d5 is beautiful. Knight g4. Uh, Knight g4 also may be interesting, but it is like allowing me to defend. Knight g4, I will get my queen out to d4 or d2 and defend. Maybe still winning, but I mean, not as beautiful as knight d5, cutting the supply. A beautiful one here. There's absolutely nothing that white can do about it because he cannot get the queen somewhere to defend the rook, and he cannot defend both the things at once. And even if he tries something like this, I mean, rook d8 is also winning, but queen d1 check first, and then rook d8. Black is completely winning. Knight d7 also is no, knight d7 does not cut it. Also, because there's one thing here, like which is also I had to forgot to highlight. Rook into d5 is a possibility. Like you should not forget that rook d8 and he can defend. But the point is that you take ed5, he will have to take with the queen, right? So you're anyways exchange up with an extra pawn. You're most likely winning, but then comes the final blow, bishop h3, and king is dominated there on g1, most likely going to get mated pretty soon. That's the final blow, but anyways you were winning. You were anyways winning. Now coming to knight d7, that is not really as great because once he captures rook d7, defending the queen, so rook d8 once again is a mate. If you play bishop d7, queen d7, he ends up with two pieces for the rook. This time you don't have your bishop h3 ideas there. And two pieces for the rook, it's not very clear again anymore. It's not very clear. So not immediately winning for us, or maybe not even winning for us. So that was the problem here. And now I want you to look at, I played rook d1 on the board here. What did I miss in this position? I was getting a little greedy. I saw some ideas with knight c8. I saw queen into e2, but I forgot to see one thing. And that one thing completely. What is that move? That one thing that I'm looking forward to, guys? Anybody? Knight g4 is not even something that you should consider here because knight g4 doesn't really threaten anything. Try to keep moves which threaten something, not something that like they're not doing anything. Knight is going out. Like, you're forgetting that I'm capturing knight into c8. I'm planning for the back rank mate. So either you take care of the back rank with h6, which I saw. I calculated all this. I was like, okay, I'll play something like this. Then I will capture, and then I'll play bb7, and then capture on a6, etc. I had these plans in mind. Completely forgetting my opponent just played knight d5, cutting my supply, and then I realized, oh no, oh shit, what did I do? Oh no, there are two pieces under attack here, and I cannot defend both of them at the same time. What a blow it was. Like, I was like, oh, I forgot. Like, I completely lost my mind here. And I know that in the move I played, bishop a4 would have been a try. But I thought about it. It is just anyways like minus. Like after queen into e2, it is like the bishop is just too strong here. So it was anyways minus, and like after losing a bind, I did not have I did not come back very well and tried to give up the best fight. I played the more complicated. I tried to go for something quickly with rook into d5, which ended up pretty soon. I resigned very soon once again because of this. My opponent also found it nicely. Knight into d5, I had some tactical ideas with knight e7, knight g6, some fork, etc. But my opponent played his bishop h3, and after this, I have nothing. I resigned right away here on bishop h3 because queen c1, queen d1, queen e2, every idea is pretty strong. And if I try my tactical resources, it's important that you capture with the h pawn together, opening up a flight square for the king. And after this, these ideas are way too strong, cannot be defended. I might try one move f4, but then my opponent will just capture here. Again, all these ideas pretty strong, absolutely no defense. Ended up in a loss for me. One small mistake and getting a little greedy. You can learn from this and probably not get greedy under such circumstances unnecessarily. It's not needed because the point is, it was not even clear what I was doing. I was just planning knight c8. What if my opponent had played h6? Nothing after that, right? There is nothing I was getting with queen f8 and all. I should have just, I will eventually do this only. So I should have just done that first itself, immediately taken the break. Okay, I cannot win. I'll just hold a draw here and be okay with it. Solved a puzzle. Okay, very nice. I didn't know that, my game is in a puzzle. If this is the, if you solve a position relevant relative to it, then that's a different story. But if you solved, I would like to know where you got this puzzle. Very nice to know that my puzzle, my game has come in a puzzle. Anyways, let's go on. Let's go to the next thing. uh I will also show you an example where I use some of the patterns that we just did a few moments ago in my own game. So just give me 1 second. Yes. Yeah. So now we had done a pattern a moment ago, something similar to what we'll see. Okay. After knight f3, I'm outrightly once again. You were reading a book. Very nice. I wanted to know which book you were reading, where you got this pattern. But nice that you got the same exact position. This time control, of course, is 1 hour 30 plus 30 seconds increment. No increment after 40 moves, Romir. That's the finish. Bishop into e2, and I'm completely winning. Okay. So he plays knight g5. Now, I'm black, of course. Like this is in Goa. Again, I don't know how this Douglas Isle of Men comes in. It's Goa, not in Isle of Man. Somehow there's some issues there in my software, I guess. But okay, let's ignore it. Let's ignore it. Cannot be in two places at once. But now after knight g5, there is only one or two things that white can look at. He can try to create some complications. Sorry, he can try to create some complications on e6. He can try to rotate his bishop and try to create something here. Now, once again, I'm having some time on the clock to think, and that's why I go for what I did next. Instead of just capturing the f1 rook, thanks a lot, Atul. Instead of capturing the f1 rook immediately, I tried to be a little creative and I use my tactical prowess in this position. Once again, because I have enough time on the clock, important important thing. If I don't have time, this is also a year or two later. That time when I showed the previous position, I was not a GM. Not that that makes a big difference, but still you're trying to mature a little bit, understand, and I have time, so I played d4. Yeah, exactly, I played d4 here, cutting off this queen's supply. The queen went to a5, and now I executed this was just a positional implementation here because it cuts off anything to do with this diagonal. Simple move. And suppose I do it this way, right? There is a small difference we can keep in mind. The queen can come to c4 or d3 and create some extra possibilities. So by having my bishop on e2, I will not allow those two squares because my bishop does cover those two squares. So maybe the queen positioning would have been worse. His queen d2 would have been a better move. He wanted to get some counterplay. He took the queen and tried to keep some pressure on c5, looking for b4 maybe. Now my idea started in this position, and it definitely doesn't start with a blunder, Ashank. There's a bishop right there. Or probably not the best idea, Shank. You have to be very careful. I just played d4. d4 opens up that line, and we cannot play rook a8. No, I don't want to blunder. Unless you want to do something after that. Oh, really? That's okay. That's okay. Glad that there's a pattern based on one of my games. So bishop into a8, but that's a very common pattern which is there in other games. Not that it doesn't exist. And I also have solved it just in that game. I do not remember. Rook 8 is looking bad to me. I don't think it works in that sense. Does it work? No, I don't think it works like something like that. Okay, I don't think your idea. You have a rook or bishop. Like you don't want to give a free rook anyways, just to open up. Like you can do it in a much better way. So it started off with rook into g3. We had seen the first position here, today's exercise, something similar, and that exact idea I tried to use, sacrificing a rook, sacrificing a bishop. Now I've done that, of course, not because I'm playing like Tal and again trying to experiment, because I've calculated it, of course, until the end. And my main point was trying to cut off box that king in, not allowing him to escape. And that is what this tactic is based on. Rook into e2. And what did I continue with here now? What do you think black should play in this position? Queen h2 will lead to king f1. The king is escaping to the other side unless you have something after that. Yes, rook f8 is the move that we are looking at because he cannot move his bishop. Many little pieces are interfering in between. There is a knight which can interfere, but our main point is queen h2. Now, what you should be looking at when you're looking at this pattern, hopefully there is no queen coming like this and defending that. I saw that, of course. There is no queen coming like that. The queen is having no defense. Knight is not entering and defending anything. Everything was under control. White is not lost yet. He has some defense, but then the calculation part comes into play. It's a long one, long variation. But queen h2 and then knight d3. No, I don't think that is clear to me whether it's winning. I think it is losing. I have sacrificed rook and bishop, Ashank, and that is what you have to keep in mind. You have to keep in mind how many pieces am I down. Like I'm 2 pieces down at the moment. And I don't really. He has two connected pawns also on this side. Like, I mean, I'm in danger zone here. He plays bishop c5 also. You have to understand that if I play knight c5 and queen f8, he still can give away and still okay. If I don't mate him. Because he still has 3 pieces. So that keeping the material count is very important. I'm 2 pieces down. I cannot risk this much. So no, I played rook f8 cutting him off and then he found the only move but it is losing and I calculated it until the end. So the variation was pretty long but I had calculated everything. Knight f3 was the only defense where after rook f3 you have to look for minute resources. This was his only move. Queen a8 check. Attacking the rook. Now if I casually play like this, it's time to resign because after this there is absolutely nothing. I am just 2 rooks down straight away. 2 rooks down, okay? Not even like 2 pieces. Now it's 2 rooks straight away down, probably never going to be enough. So I have to play the rook back to f8. He plays queen into f8 because otherwise he's getting mated. And after knight f8, he captures bishop c5. Now there is no mate, but even after this, I had seen the final thing, which is knight d7. This was an addition. Okay, this I came across later. First, I had only seen knight e3, he will have to give away his rook, and we can safely say that this position most likely will be winning for me. Bishop e3, queen h4. Although he has 2 bishops, it's a little risky, but my knight will be able to somehow come in. I have 3 pawns also. My knight will be able to join in quickly, that's the point. And what I did in the game is I just added knight d7 first. Smart move here because it got the knight in much more quickly. Not here, sorry, here. Knight d7 very important first. It got the knight in much more quickly because if he captures bishop d4, can anybody tell me what is the best move for black here? The position that we looked at is not exactly what you said. We had an extra knight also. But here now, what is the best move for black in this particular position? E5. Why are you rushing so much? Why are you opening so many lines without even guaranteeing yourself a mate? Look again, think again, you will get the best move. E5 is probably not one of them. Yes, queen d3 is the move. Very nice. That's a triple attack here. Will guarantee me one piece for sure. And then, if it defends the rook, I'm sure that two knights with a queen against two rooks and bishop is going to be good enough in this position. It's going to be an easy win for me. So he cannot capture on d4. And just that same idea which I'm going to execute with queen h2 and knight e3, I just improved by playing one extra move, knight d7. Very nice addition there. Bishop b4, he went with bishop b4, which immediately, like, it was over. And here also I added something else. Now you could have also played this way and finished it off. It's also simply winning because you're not losing that pawn now. Bishop on c5 no longer there, and possibly your queen will join in. E2 is an idea. So many ideas here. You should most likely win pretty easily. But I added this another finesse here with knight e5, with ideas of knight f3 check and the mate pattern. That, let's just show it. Knight f3 check, and a mate here immediately for the king on f1 using the two knights, using all the patterns that we learn into practice. So suppose he goes ahead and captures on e5 immediately. I can, before I capture, I can always take the pawn, improve back if I need to, maybe then capture. Maybe I can play queen g3. I can improve in many different ways. Most likely, once again, winning this game very easily. Knight into e5 is also very simple. So he has absolutely no defense. And after knight e5, he played king here. And then I just simply played d3, attacking the rook. Again, not in a rush to play knight e3 and all. Just attacking the rook. Cannot move it. Queen f2 is coming. Moves here. Knight a3 is coming, which is immediately a mate in. Mate in 3, let's say. That's an immediate mate. So again, using those finesse and that pattern which we saw, cutting the king off, boxing it in. Now you may not be able to find out this pattern entirely in the game, but at least we can look for it. And you can try to see if you can calculate that deep and it works out. If not, coolly play bishop f1, capture the exchange and simply win the game rather than go for complications. You can keep it simple or you can get creative. If you have time, of course. Okay, that is one thing, keep in mind. Don't do this when you have like 30 seconds on the clock. Of course not, because you're most likely going to miss something and your opponent will either flag you or you will end up blundering. So you don't want to do that. In that case, just simply play fast, take the piece, drive this knight back. Oh, sorry, what is, take the piece, drive the knight back, and where is that position now? Yeah, take the piece, drive this knight back, and play it slow and steady, and you should most likely win easily without complicating too many things. Anyways, oh yeah, let's move on to the next one. Yeah, in this position now as black, what do you think you should do? This is not from my game, guys, and again, this doesn't really show, so let's move to the scene. Black to play, what should we do as black in this position? Once again, guys, if you do enjoy the stream, then definitely the like button brings more people and we enjoy that motivation. You can also subscribe and check out other content. That would also be great. Thanks a lot for tuning in today. So some tactics and some positional ideas, we're trying to use both of them, and we have to find the right mix and the right patterns in the right positions. Bishop into h3, is it? Okay, that may be. Yeah, okay, bishop into h3 also may work. I'm not really sure, but it could work out. Rook f2. Okay, yeah, maybe bishop h3 is also quite good. Tactical pattern here, Rushikesh, yes. But let's say if I keep it simple, what is the simple move that we should play in this position as black? Of course, like you're looking all for tactics, but sometimes, like, simple moves also can get you there, get you past that finish line. This will give you a significant edge. And let's say bishop h3 was not really possible here. It looks like a good move, bishop h3. We'll come back to that. But simple move is not a5 here. Like a5 will like push your pieces back. a5 you don't want to do immediately. Like focus on which pieces are a problem, which pieces are strong in white's camp, and eliminate them. Once you eliminate the strong pieces in white's camp, it becomes very easy to capitalize on the weaknesses that you create. He has played f4 and d4. What should come to your mind? Which patterns, which squares? Plus b4 on top of that. Which squares are we eyeing here straight away? Bishop h3 we'll see in a moment. Which squares are we eyeing at? Knight h5 is not good, Itachi. Like he is also eyeing to play bf5. You should not forget what your opponent's ideas is. So if you play knight h5, just what is the main plan of knight h5? It doesn't have a very strong idea because knight g3 is under control. Knight f4 is well defended. And you're also missing out on white's important idea, which is f5, trapping your own bishop immediately. Coming to knight e4, trying to open up lines in the game. The same thing happens here also. Bishop into e4, d into e4, and d5. It can be a problem. Of course, you may catch some bishop h3 and all, but that is not what we are looking for. We are looking for a simple move with a simple advantage. Now, whenever you are not finding a move in this position, all are very slow, that's completely okay. See, sometimes slow is good enough. You should know which patterns or which squares have been weakened when he plays something like this. Three pawns on the dark squares, a tall pawn here on d2. Which bishop is good, which bishop is bad, which bishop is good, which bishop is bad. Simple. Bishop f5. Sometimes simple chess is good enough to get you a significantly big lead here, because captures, three squares, two squares at least up for grabs, and these three pawns are not really helping black in white in any possible way, because they're blocking the bishop is not having room to improve. And also one more thing, the knight is also on e2 misplaced. Would have loved to come be on f3 and come to e5, which is unfortunately not happening. Bishop f5 is the simplest move. So if you're not able to find a move, right, you can do two, three different things, Rishikesh. Like look at the position, see what your opponent is doing first. So before you go, don't really think about your own plans. Think about what your opponent is doing. He's clearly planning f5 here to trap your bishop. That's the first plan. I mean, if you see f5 as a plan, like you will either look at bishop into h3 or you will look at bishop f5, because possibly these are the only good moves in this position, because otherwise you will not play g6, right? You don't want to weaken your structure. We know that we should not play g6 unnecessarily and create weaknesses. So most likely you would have naturally automatically played the best move in this position. But the next thing that you look at is, how can we exploit, which are the better pieces? Can we do something? Can we take care of white's threat and also do something better for our position, like eliminate his light square bishop, which is the best piece in the position for him at the moment. And after that you just completely better. Now bishop h3 is a tactical resource which probably works, guys, like gh3 and then queen h3. Nice spin here, and with the idea of knight g4, maybe that also works. I didn't look at it clearly. If you play knight d1, I think there is some nice spins that you can exploit here, which is, oh, actually I'm making a mistake here. Can anybody tell me what did I forget? I just realized that you can exploit nice spins, but in the process I forgot something very important here. Can anybody tell me what is white's best move? What did I miss out on here? I'm looking at the nice juicy mate here. I've forgotten about white's resource with bishop h7, losing the queen straight away. A late realization, but I think then it's not very clear, right? Like I don't think this is something I'll have to check with the engine, but I don't think this is very clear. I mean, he has one nice threat here, unless you can play queen g4 and make it work. And I don't like to play something like this unnecessarily, but maybe this is his idea. Queen into e2, king into e2, knight into d4, somewhere king goes, and then knight b3 fork. Pretty long variation. Maybe works out, maybe bishop h3 works out. I'll have to look at it later. But we were looking at the simple position idea with bishop f5, which was winning. Yes, bishop discovery attack. Forgot about it for a second. Realized it immediately though. Let's move on to the next one. Again, in this position, what do you think white should do here, guys? White to play? How do we exploit this position? No, you're looking at the right thing, but maybe you're doing the wrong thing. Yes, Lloyd. Glad to see you here, seeing you for the first time. But you're absolutely right. You can definitely do something like Bishop G. We had done a similar problem a few problems ago, and the idea of Bishop G5 immediately is to take a huge lead in positional edge. The bishop is bad. Get rid of the knight and get a beautiful outpost for your knight on d5. If you're black, you should be very careful. If white has not exploited this early, you should take care of it immediately. And what is the move that black should play in this position? If black white had like given you a chance, what is the move that black should play in this position? There are actually two ways I would deal with this, and I will show you both. But one natural one, at least, you all can tell me. There are two ways I would think of it actually. H6, yeah. H6 would be the best. I mean, the simplest way to deal with it, but I would not play h6 here. I don't like the move h6 because it's an unnecessary weakening. But I think it's the need, like it's needed here. It's necessary here to like prevent bishop g5 over like thinking too much about the weaknesses that you have created. This is much more of a problem. But I'll show you what I would play in this position, just for the sake of it. Like it works here, but this move queen d8 is what I would play in this position, and there's a reason. My point is, first I'm planning d5, and secondly I will take care of this h6 idea in a different way than normally what you would do. Now if he plays bishop g5, I will never give my knight away. I will take it back, and queen d8 is just to defend that e7 bishop, because I know that he will get the d5 square, but in the future I will be able to utilize my knight to exchange that knight. That is more important. The knight should not be there on d5, and I should not be having a dark square bishop here. I would be in horrible state, and if I do this, at least I can maybe exchange and trade that knight off, and 28 is a nice way to do it, rather than weakening with h6. Like I don't like h6, so I would do queen d8. But it's needed that you don't allow bishop g5. That is more important, that he don't allow bishop g5 to come in this position. That's the most important need of the hour here. You should stop bishop g5. And as white, he immediately pounce, take it, play knight here. If you play something like queen d8, important move, bishop into f6. No waiting. There is absolutely no time. Smart player like me will retreat the knight back and then uh, be very happy, because I'm like at least able to challenge your knight on d5. But take it, nothing to challenge me ever. This knight is just planted. It's a beautiful knight, and this bishop is a bad bishop here on g f6. Not really useful, especially behind these pawns here. Anyways, let's move on. Yeah, in this position again we have a slight tactical pattern. White to play. What is the best move for white here in this position? It's an opposite color bishops, and we are trying to utilize them to the best. So to get more attacks, shall we go with e6? The material at the moment is equal, but the king is slightly weak with his pieces slightly far away. But as you know, the queen does a good job from long range. So he's defending that diagonal. What plans come to your mind as white here in this position? Before looking at the tactical idea, immediate finish also, right? There is an immediate finish here, but before looking at that, you can also look at what plans you can utilize in this position, and then You can figure out which one works the best. Any ideas? Rook g6. Okay. Can you tell me what is the plan behind rook g6? What are you planning to attack? What is the next step there after rook g6, Marianne? Because at the moment, rook g6 is not really threatening anything. Bishop f7 is probably, I don't know if bishop f7 is working here, guys. At least I don't have it here. Bishop f7 immediately will probably not work, right? Like, what is the idea? Rook f7 is coming on the board. Don't like, preferably if possible, like first figure out a plan. Your idea is to play queen g4. I had an idea. The bishop d3 is definitely a good plan. Your idea is to play queen g4, right? So just formulate in a better way, like, put it out in a better way, safer way. Let's say safer way. This is not a very safe way to do it. This is a safer way to do it, preparing that. Because suppose I play rook g6, you should think of what your opponent is doing. Opponent may attack your queen, may attack your bishop and the pawn at the same time. And now queen g4 is not really winning for you anymore. The king goes to h8 and he's able to prevent everything possible here in this position here. You don't have a mate anymore on the h7 square. Queen f5 is just captured with king g7. That gave him counterplay and he's able to hold us easily. When there is no mate. Hold meaning he's winning now. He will be able to win very easily, let's say. So when you're formulating, right, see the simple plans. You know the simple plan? Battery, maybe some strong idea here. That's a simple plan. If that doesn't work out, then you can look at all the complicated ideas that you have on the board. Because if you look at it like this, there is queen e1 and black is not going to give up that easily. Queen is going to do what it does best and try to give you perpetual. Maybe here you might not get, no, I will not get creative like this. Let me just give a perpetual and just take a draw. If you play queen h3, you know what the situation. You are probably losing a pawn, but even this, it can be difficult for white to win this position from here on. So queen f4 is also falling, most likely going to end in a draw. And if you take the, sorry, if you take the bishop back, then I mean, you don't have a bishop on the h7 diagonal there, so you don't have a mate. But the first thing you should look at is the simple plans. Then you can formulate which plans work out well. For example, queen e6, queen g4 straight away, bishop d3, e6, etc. E6 also is pretty much winning after you can open up. But white found some other plan here, and that is again to do with the boxing that king inside there. He found a beautiful v source, which is the simplest one once you think of it. And black doesn't have any immediate plan. Queen e1, queen h4 is not an immediate idea. So white found a beautiful move here. It is not bishop d3, it is not e6. It is not rook g6, neither it is queen g4. When I say beautiful, I've given you a very big hint. And I think you should be able to get it if you can. First thing is you should also look at it. And this is why we solve problems to acquaint ourselves with these patterns. Once we get to see these patterns, we definitely get to see them on the board. Well, that is the question you should ask yourself, Ashish. You should be bold in your answers. And if you're going to execute queen into f7 on the board, you should know that it is working. Otherwise, probably, playing something simple like e6 or queen g4 will be a better idea, because otherwise you might end up losing that game when you're completely winning. This is a winning position for white. Because the bishop is badly placed, you have perfect, like, whenever I told you one more thing, whenever you're going for an attack with an opposite color bishops, preferably pawns on the dark squares. That restricts your opponent's bishop and always gives you more chances. Queen d8 is not really going to cut it, because queen d8 again doesn't really have an immediate plan and also lets go of some important squares. Queen can come for the defense and your ideas don't work. Queen e4 also comes for the defense. But somebody said queen into f7 and that is the move, guys. It's a beautiful finish here. A queen sack straight away. Rook into f7. Rook d8. King h7. And looks like nothing is happening. So we'll play bishop d3 and end up a piece down, right? No, definitely not. People have figured it out already. Bishop into f7 is the plan, is the move. because it's not just bishop g8 that is the idea. The main idea is bishop g6. It's unstoppable because the queen is badly placed on b1. One small change in the position would have made a big difference. He could have moved. Actually, maybe still is a good plan. Actually, still may be interesting. Actually, because even here we have another pattern. Actually, a mating idea here. Wow, I didn't see that. I also learned something nice. But the main point is like whatever he does, we have bishop g6 pop coming in here, and we immediately get the queen. Like that was the main point. This at g6, and we are an exchange up. So that's immediately winning. Bishop g6 is the mate idea, yes. And bishop g8 is the second idea, which is if you play something else, you can play bishop g6 also and win. But there comes this windmill thing that you all know. Bishop into b1, and that wins the queen. Of course, this wouldn't be good if he plays bishop g5 or a5. So, okay, very careful. Bishop g8, big blunder, because after king h8, you will win his queen, but you will not win the game anymore, maybe. Maybe you could still win if you get lucky. But again, you're risking too much because the rook is under attack. So you should play bishop g6. Safely take that exchange, and that's immediately winning for us. Moving on. Yeah, again, this is one of my games which I'll quickly show you. I will not go through the entire game. I will go to the heat of the moment. So the heat of the moment started right away here. Okay, so after a long time, again, we are both under a little bit of a time trouble situation here. I am black here, and this is again, this tournament is correct here. This is Isle of Man, and the position is locked down. I didn't have to do something like c4, but I wanted to do something more. I wanted to get creative. So I played c4. I allowed him to open up, and I tried to go for something a little bit fast, and I tried to go with g5. This was a bad idea, okay? So when you're going for something like c4, you're creating weaknesses, you're opening lines, you're doing that only if you're looking for something on the king side. Why did I play c4? Can anybody tell me? Pinpoint why I played c4 here. There's only one reason I would play something like c4. Yeah, it is definitely, you can always go that one step further and you can find that pattern. The pattern was winning. Why would I play something like c4? There is only one possible or two possible reasons. One is possibly to get that d3 square for the bishop. The second thing is, can anybody tell me? I'm going to start an assault. Let's say I have already planned. I told you my idea. I'm going to go for this. Why would I play something like c4 here? Ideas are, they are both correlated. Besides putting my bishop out on d3, can anybody tell me one more point why I would do this? Well, I will tell you the point. The point of putting c4 on the board is also if I go with g5, white will immediately go for exchanging my pieces. Cut white bishop, exactly. You're right about that. I don't want to exchange too many pieces, right? And that is why something like c4. Not just to take that square, but to cut that piece temporarily out there. And whenever you're going for an attack like this, of course I've opened up lines, but my main focus is here, and sometime my rook can immediately join in via that c3 square. It was just a long-term thinking, but my opponent thought much better than me and calculated much better than me. We'll see that in a moment. I went for something aggressive. I still could have taken like slowly, but queen d8, bishop g5, something slow, but I had committed. Went for something aggressive, and let's see how it did not work out. He played g3. I'm sacrificing a piece here, okay? Gh4. He completely outcalculated. This was my calculation from the start, and if I tell you the engine's best move in this position, it is extremely ridiculous. King h8. I mean, you cannot really look for such moves in that time control. This is not a study we are playing on the board. We're playing with less time, and we're trying to find something fast here. Clearly, I'm not going to play king h8 on the board here suddenly with absolutely no plan. Very difficult to find move. I went for the natural attack. You see my ideas of playing b3, like opening up with c4. I'm trying to plan this, I'm trying to plan this. Of course, king h8 doesn't fit in anywhere there. But king h2, and he outcalculated me completely here. Played very fast. Both were low on time, but my attack did not work out very well. It was unnecessary is what I'm trying to highlight here. King h2, rook into c3, g4. I thought I have enough compensation, but after a couple of moves that he played, I immediately realized, and here After I played queen into h4, he found out like such good, like we played very nicely here, very brilliant chess. What do you think white played out in this position after queen into h4? There are some strong patterns here happening. Bishop f1, etc. There's still a lot of worry about for white here, but white came up again with something nice here. Can anybody tell me what move it is? No, no, no. Bishop h6 check was not working. You're on the right path, but you're choosing possibly the wrong move. Yes. Bishop g5 was the brilliancy here. Bishop h6 even I had seen in the game. It doesn't really gives me good chances to come back with some interesting counterplay with king h6. There are still you have to figure out that he's still not too many pawns. Like he has, if you can consider this, he has 3 pawns and I have 6 pawns. I have 6 pawns for the piece. So you have to consider if I take rook c3 and play bishop f1, it's still not over even if I capture. There are good chances for me still here to try to even hold a draw. I mean, it's possibly winning for him, but in that time sense, like you can say that I had some chances. But the move that he played just completely destroyed me because bishop g5 was extremely strong. An attack on the queen, clearing this rook here, and what he had calculated this. I analyzed with him later. He had said he had already seen this like 5 moves ago, which was really nice. And after queen g5, rook into c3 is just rook up. That's not enough material, even though I have 6 pawns for his 3. It's just not enough. I went with h5 again. You should always go for those small last resources. So if rook into c8, I had queen f4 and queen f3. It's a mate on g2 by force. There is absolutely nothing defending that mate. No matter how hard he tries with his checks, the king hides and it's a mate on g2. I should always look for your last resources. Of course, white again played a brilliant move. Can anybody tell me which move that he would play? It's still not easy actually. Surprisingly, still like queen f4 check can create issues for black. But again, he played the next move, which after which I could not find anything. I found something, but a couple of next moves. I will just show you this move because it's not very easy to see. King g1. Now you can see that we have reached 42nd move. So after 40 moves, we used to get half an hour extra. So white also got time to calculate and he calculated the best move, king g1. I played queen f4. Again, rook f8 will lead to queen f3 and a mate here. And white played this brilliant queen c2 with the idea of rook c7 check. And after this, I just had enough. Because there was a lot of time also on the clock. And I resigned in this position. Again, see rook h3, right? See, I have a lot of pawns and I have rooks on the board. Rook h3, in fact, is a blunder which will end up losing for you. I don't remember how exactly, but I have it here with rook f8. No, no, not rook f8. What is it? Rook c1, sorry. Or queen g1, no, rook c1. With the idea of rook h1, in fact, ends up losing for you. This was long time ago, so I forgot about the variation exactly, but we can see that after f3 there is rook. Yeah, there are some complications here again. I think f3 is met with h4 and rook g2 is met with rook h1, and then we have a mate here. I think that is the way it works. Yeah, but okay, that would have been terrible for him. So rook h3 was not move, king g1 a cool move, and then queen c2 again a cool move, and I resigned after this. So basically, my mistake was I went a little bit too aggressively. I went to do something, taking intuition. Sometimes you'll always make these mistakes, and it was way too long from here on. But I didn't need to. I could have played a little bit slow chess by exchanging his dark square bishop. I didn't need to immediately open up the position. My bishops were well placed. I felt like I could do more, and thus I went with c4. But the idea stays the same. Once I go for it, I'm not going to back out, and I went with g5 and went for something aggressive in this position. That didn't work out well. You can learn from my mistakes also as well as your own mistakes. try to use these patterns on the board, and that will hopefully help your chess. Like I was trying to recreate the patterns that I knew about Queen F8. This is definitely not a pattern I learned, but engine teaches us new patterns every day. The idea was to actually get here. Actually, not even here, in fact. The idea was to play h6. Can you really believe it? Like h6 in this position. I don't understand what is happening. There are so many things like c4 and queen h3. Engine is least concerned about this. In fact, recently I saw a beautiful game where the engine put in Zug, somebody in Zugzwang. It was ridiculous, like ridiculous Zugzwang on the board. But okay, engines are engines, getting better and better. But okay, this is my patterns. Anyways, guys, hopefully you all enjoyed that session, and if you all did, then definitely hit the like button. Once again, we'll meet tomorrow at 7 p.m. and hopefully I see you then. Hopefully you all join and tune in at 7 p.m. once again tomorrow. And again, we'll be doing more of this series. Tomorrow is the last day, but after that also we'll be continuing more of this series. So if you enjoy our content, then definitely hit the like button and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a nice night. Until then, enjoy the IPL and whatever else you're doing. Good night. You're most welcome, Ronit. Thank you. Goodbye.